Well, let's make a start. So my name is Chris Barnett. I'm from Melbourne, Australia, where it is 5 o'clock in the morning. So let me say to you though, good evening, if that's your relevant time zone. Good afternoon, if that works for you. And if there is anyone else in the same situation as me or close to me with our New Zealand friends, good morning to you, especially New Zealanders where it's a little bit more civilised. I work for the Uniting Church in Australia, the Synod of Victoria Tasmania, in the role of intergenerational ministry, brackets children and families. Pretty much that means resourcing, encouraging, consulting, advocating, training in the area of intergenerational ministry with a focus on children and their families. I'm also privileged to be engaged with Messy Church, helping it as best I can with a team of others flourish across not just Melbourne and Victoria, but across the country. So it's good to be here, and thank you for being here wherever you might be in the world. Also want to say thank you to Lucy for inviting me back. It's always lovely to be invited somewhere once, but this is my second Facebook Live. It's been a while between, but here I am again. So that's an incredible encouragement. And thirdly, I want to say thank you, maybe on behalf of us all, for the amazing work Lucy, Jane, the BRF team have done and continue to do to support us all throughout the messy world. And I'm just looking through here. I see it's great that we've got a message there from Derbyshire, from South Africa. Oh, thank you, Jane. Fantastic. Keep those comments coming through. So in the course of these next few minutes, the invitation has been to, it might have been to waffle on or similar words in relation to the chapter on all age discipleship in the new Messy Discipleship book. Not quite sure I was taken off the bench at the last moment to contribute a chapter to the book, but for whatever reason, that invitation came through, and it was a challenge, but a delight to put some words down on paper. It's actually quite confronting when you're not a writer. In fact, I'm probably more a doer, not even a speaker, to have to put things down in sentences in the hope that they will be a benefit or a blessing to others. The word is whiffling. Thank you, Mary, if you're following in the chat. I hope this whole section is not perceived as one long whiffle, but we shall see. So these next 20 minutes also, an invitation to think together around all age discipleship, particularly in the Messy Church context, but also it's a subtle or maybe not so subtle encouragement to in fact buy the Messy Discipleship book, where it's not just about all age discipleship, it's an excellent contribution to discipleship through the lens of each of the Messy Church values, topped and tailed by good as always, amazing as always, comments, reflections from Lucy. I wonder if you had the opportunity for an elevator speech, how might you summarise the heart of the glorious, diverse adventure that is Messy Church in just 30 seconds? If the opportunity serendipitously arose to give a key leader of a congregation, a faith community or denomination, a snapshot of the essence of Messy Church, what might you say? I invite you now to put a few words into the chat. 3 words perhaps that for you capture the essence of Messy Church. And I'm going to hopefully do a much better job of seeing what they are and reflecting back to them. The opportunity to put in quickly 3 words that for you capture the heart. Happiness. Thank you, Mikhail. What else have we got there? Intergenerational. So on the money, Mary. Time for a couple more. Happiness, intergenerational. Oh, 9 of us. That was a big of an ask. Is that all we're going to get? Maybe you can't use the excuse it's too early to be typing, but it's good to see you there, Roberta. Togetherness as well. Sounds like a good chapter, good title for another book there, Mary. Messy Togetherness. Maybe someone should write that one. If I had that opportunity for 3 words, my 3 key words would be all age, discipleship, and community. What excites and energizes me most about Messy Church is the vision for creating new communities of people of all ages growing in their following of Jesus together. Young and old, the not so young and not so old, gathering together to experience, to explore, and to express the great love of God as revealed in Christ. People of all ages, all abilities, all faith stories, from none whatsoever perhaps to the fully committed, having the opportunity to discover, deepen, and delight in their engagement with God, God's world, and their place in God's world, but all framed in the language of discipleship. My passion for Messy Church is to see more disciples of all ages and more discipleship communities living out their discipleship in response to God's gracious invitation to abundant life. I wonder what your Messy Church elevator speech might be. All age, discipleship, and community. To unpack these ideas in the context of Messy Church will take much longer than 30 seconds trapped in a lift. Indeed, 20 minutes now, or approximately 3,000 words in the chapter in the book, are not nearly enough. However, as a starting point, I invite us to briefly consider what it means to consider Messy Church as an all-age discipleship community. I also want to encourage you to pause perhaps and take a moment to think, to reflect. For the people that come to your Messy Church, if you were to invite them to think about, do they see Messy Church more as a program or event or a community? I wonder what their response would be. Would the typical person who participates in the colour, the excitement, the activities, the celebration, the food in your Messy Church, if you were to ask them, would they think Messy Church is an event, perhaps a program, or a community? What do you think they would say? Feel free to give me your thoughts in the chat. Event or community for the people that walk through the door? Tough one. People aren't keen to hit their keyboards at this hour of the morning or evening. Give you a bit of a break. For me, the idea of Messy Church primarily as a community places a focus on the priority of the relational dimension of Messy Church. Messy Church is not a program, it's a community of people, sometimes gathered together, more often apart, but connected to one another through relationships and shared experiences. Messy Church is not an event to attend, but a community to belong to and contribute to. Messy Church is not just about receiving or just about giving. It's a community where participants of all ages have the opportunity to both give and receive. Messy Church, as we know, is not a place that privileges age. It is instead a community where all ages are valued equally, given opportunity to be engaged meaningfully and respectfully honoured as made in the image of God. People in relationship with one another, with God, and as part of God's world. How exciting and what a privilege. But if Messy Church is not just a community of all ages, it's a discipleship community. For me, Messy Church is a place of and for discipleship, both individual and collective. Messy Church is a community comprising a range of disciples and discipleship experiences. From those who have no prior experience of what it means to be a follower of Jesus, to those whose experience has been lifelong. A potentially helpful image for Messy Church, as opposed to the unhelpful image of stepping stones, is that of a pathway. In fact, a discipleship pathway where all ages can journey together, a pathway of exploring and learning, a pathway on which faith can be discovered, tried on, owned, and lived out. A pathway that begins with God and continues with God along the way. Messy Church is an all-age, Messy Church engaging discipleship in community, Messy Church as church. How exciting and what a privilege to be part of such a church community. Hopefully so far, so good. But have you ever wondered what makes Messy Church really Messy Church? I'm going to have one more crack at encouraging people to commit to the chat. And I'm going to invite and frame this in terms of a bit of a race, perhaps even a bit of a test. I want to see in a moment when I say go, how many people can put in the chat, when I say go, the 5 Messy Church values. If I had a prize, I'd offer it, but no prizes this morning, this evening, or this afternoon. Ready, set, go. Who can be the first person to type in the 5 Messy Church values? Oh, can't cope with the competition. Come on. Is anyone going to indulge me here? Ooh, me, thank you. Let's see those 5 values pop up in the chat. And while I do, I respond to the comment about all ages growing together. It is all gauge, glue, glitter, lots of things happening there. That is excellent to see. Someone asked about my aversion, perhaps, to stepping stones. I think sometimes unhelpfully, Messy Church is seen as a stepping stone to real church. That's the first reason I'm kind of uncomfortable sometimes around the messy, the language of stepping stones. There's also a sense that sometimes stepping stones can have an overtly and maybe constricting linear sense with regard to our experience of faith. So rather than something linear, which is inferred or implied, but we can infer or be implied by stepping stones, I prefer the image of a pathway that might wander and meander and go in lots of different directions, even winding back on itself at time as it comes to our experience of faith, our experience of discipleship. So thanks for that question. As I look back through, I see many of those words that are core to Messy Church starting to appear. All age, celebration, creativity, being Christ-centered, and of course, hospitality. So we have Messy Church, all age, discipleship, community. We have Messy Church as a place that's primarily community, not program or event. We have people in relationship with one another, with God, and with God's world. And before we get on to discipleship per se, there's a sense that what makes Messy Church unique, what separates Messy Church from inherited church is the sense that at the centre of Messy Church sits these 5 core values: all-age celebration, Christ-centred creativity and hospitality, that are lived out through the 3 phases usually of messy activities, messy celebration and the messy words. In any other expressions of the Messy Church community that take place between the regular gatherings, these core values are similarly to be expressed. Arguably, what makes Messy Church really Messy Church is the unique combination of these values lived out intentionally within the context of an all-age discipleship community. Well, I feel like I'm staying awake, which is a good thing at this point in the process. But if we've thought about community, what is it about discipleship? One of the great things about the Messy Discipleship book is there's a big chunk of very wise words and reflection that builds on research that helps us unpack and explore and wonder together as to what we actually mean by discipleship. What do we actually mean by discipleship? My sense is that it will be slightly different and it will be nuanced for whatever community that we are part of. We all know the 5 core values of Messy Church, but I often talk about something that almost is as powerful and is part of the gift of Messy Church, and that is this concept of contextualization. For me, part of the beauty, the magic, the wonder of Messy Church is the capacity to contextualize what we've been offered to our local space, the faith tradition in which we sit. The way that faith is expressed in our local inherited church and the community our church sits within. So one of the first things I want to say about discipleship in the Messy Church context is that it needs to be contextualized to our actual space. In the same way that no Messy Church is exactly the same as the Messy Church next door or the Messy Church across the other side of the world. I want to suggest that our understanding of discipleship, our approach to discipleship, the way discipleship is nuanced in our particular space will depend on who we are, where we are, and how we collectively have come to understand discipleship, contextualization. The second thing I'd like to invite us to ponder in relation to discipleship is that, yes, it is about an individual, but it's also about collective experience. Discipleship for individuals, discipleship for households, and discipleship as a collective community. And for me, this is one of the most exciting things about discipleship in the Messy Church context. When we think of discipleship as a whole community engaging in discipleship together, it creates the opportunity for whether we've been a disciple, a follower of Jesus for most of our lives, or whether we're just coming across this concept for the first time, together collectively we can be engaged in discipleship, living out whatever that means for us in a particular space and particular time. So the idea that as we think about discipleship in the all-age context, in the Messy Church space, and maybe even in other spaces as well, it's about contextualization. It's about recognizing it's not just about the individual. We can express our discipleship as households and collectively as a whole Messy Church. When we're gathered and when we are apart, we're not going to think about that, but you might want to take that away for further consideration. And the third thing that we need to do, though, is to at least have a crack at how we understand discipleship. And for me, the most powerful way perhaps of looking at it, and it can look over perhaps simplified, but I want to suggest that at its core, discipleship is about our learning from and living like Jesus. Our learning from and living like Jesus as ourselves, as our households, and collectively. And it's not just something we think about, it's not just something we talk about, but discipleship is expressed in what we actually do as we take on various, let's say, discipleship practices, again, in our own lives, in the lives of the households we might be part of, and collectively as a messy church. But what that actually looks like and feels like, as I say, will be different, will be nuanced, depending on where we are and who we are. So the sense as we think about messy church, about community, about discipleship, the third piece is this idea of being all age. Yes, it's a core messy church value. And I want to say more than that is actually it's vital to our life of discipleship. And this is what takes us into perhaps this area of being intergenerational. Many of you will have caught up with the vibe that around intergenerationality, all the buzz in many places at the moment, at the heart of the push for a more intergenerational approach is the thinking and that points us to the research that has emerged that encourages us to realise that if we want to create an environment that fosters lifelong discipleship, lifelong learning from and living like Jesus, embodying in our practices how we are to live, then if we're to do that, an intergenerational environment is most conducive for that lifelong experience. All age vital, learned that from a 10-year-old. Thank you, Mary. So this idea of being intergenerational as we think about our discipleship is not just being, in effect, almost church-wise politically correct. It's actually something we're being drawn to for the fostering of our lifelong discipleship. And as you, I'm sure, are aware, at the core of intergenerationality is relationship. Relationships that embrace equality, we are all equal irrespective of age, mutuality, we all benefit, we're all in this together, and reciprocity, we all give and we all receive. Wow, there we go. 6 more minutes to land this thing this morning. What does this mean in terms of practicalities? Now, this was a real push for me in the book. This was the hardest bit for the editors to actually write something practical, because I sort of love the thinking and the theory and how do you actually land this. And some of you might feel this doesn't quite do that, but I hope it's enough to set a foundation to actually give you one way to think about how we can incorporate an all-age approach to the discipleship we're seeking to encourage and enhance in our messy church communities. And I've kind of got 3 key things jotted down in my notes. The first thing, number one thing I said, is that our approach to discipleship needs to be contextualized to where we are. We need to be able to discern, describe, design, and develop an approach to all age discipleship that is ours, based on research, based on our experience, based on the faith tradition that in which our messy church sits, in accord with the values and the ethos of messy church. But it needs to be unique to us. We can't take on somebody else's or another messy church's approach necessarily to discipleship. We need to develop it and be able to name it for our space. Also want to suggest number 2, it needs to include what I'm calling care. Care as an acronym, C-A-R-E. If we're going to actually develop discipleship through this all-age lens, if we've done the work of discerning, describing, designing, and developing, we need to ensure this common understanding, that's the C, there is a common understanding of what we mean by discipleship, what we think we know it looks like when it's lived out, and then be really clear as to how we communicate that and share that and build it into our lives as leadership teams, amongst those who serve alongside as part of Messy Church, and then into the whole of the Messy Church community. A common understanding that we can own and articulate. The second thing, so C for common understanding. A, I've used the language of aligned practices. If the expression of discipleship is the practices that we engage in, the things that we do, my suggestion is that we need to make sure this is aligned and is enabled to be expressed in as individuals, as households, and as a collective Messy Church community. So as we think about our discipleship practices, the discipleship we're encouraging, how do we do that in a way that is consistent for individuals, for households, and also the whole community? Common understanding, aligned practices, and a relational emphasis. Again, is the heart of community, the heart of Messy Church, this idea that discipleship is relational, about our relationship with Jesus, a relationship with God, relationship with others, and relationship with God's world. Discipleship is primarily relational. And that's C, common understanding, A for aligned practices, R for relational understanding, first time I tripped over my words, and it's even more, should be warming up by now, relational emphasis, and an embedded intergenerationality. The idea that being intergenerational is part of everything that we do. This is perhaps the most powerful concept, not just for discipleship, but in fact all aspects of our being Messy Church together. How do we continue to foster an environment where all ages, yes, are valued, where relationships are mutual and reciprocal, all ages together, taking that next step to engage in ways that encourage, affirm, and build up faith and the expression of faith. And for most of us here that are leaders, quickly want to outline one approach that I think is helpful for embedding intergenerationality. And if you notice, I'm the kind of person who likes an acronym, C-A-R-E. Now I'm going for alliteration, 5 quick Ps. Basically, I want to suggest that any almost element, component around Messy Church or any other church involves 5 Ps. There's a planning phase, a preparing phase, a presenting phase, a participating phase, and an appraising phase. You'll notice I cheated with the last one, but that's space for reflection and feedback and evaluation. And one relatively simple way to encourage intergenerationality, encourage all ages, is to think through each of those phases. How are we involving different ages, and how are we enabling them to interact intergenerationally? My encouragement to you is to think through each of those components as a leader, as a leadership team. How can you intentionally engage more ages in each of those phases? In the planning point, in the preparing point, in the presenting point, and particularly in the feedback appraisal part of the puzzle. There's a few more Ps. My suspicion is the more that we can intentionally engage all ages in each of those phases, the more we can slowly build a more intergenerational culture. We can slowly build an environment where relationships occur in positive, healthy, safeguarding, appropriate ways across the generations, and that together our discipleship can flourish. For me, that's maybe something we need to, if we can unlock this one, who knows what the potential, one more P, can be. And yes, there's a question in the chat, can we involve all ages in these phases? And I strongly want to say with intentionality, and oh, here's another P, prayer, we can. We might need to draw on our creativity to have that. We might need to become more flexible in the way we meet, the way we get feedback, the way we expect people to engage. But yes, I think it's possible. So there we are, we're just about out of time. Messy church, discipleship, all age discipleship, it's there, it's possible. I think it's something that we can continue to go deeper into. We began with this sense of our 3 key words for me, for Messy Church, about all age discipleship community. This idea that we're primarily relational, Messy Church as relational community first, although we do gather for events and activities and doing fun and creative and life-affirming and faith-building activity together. We've thought a little bit about discipleship and its need to be contextualised to wherever we are, and about it involving, yes, individuals, but also households and also collectively as a Messy Church. We've thought about what makes us distinctive as Messy Church, the interrelationship of those values expressed in our living and being and doing together. And we've thought a little bit about, or started perhaps even a conversation around the contextualization of discipleship to our unique spaces, and also this idea of how important it is to be able to discern, describe, design, and develop our approach to discipleship. And perhaps want to include, if you're the kind of person that goes for acronyms, CARE, common understanding that we can articulate and share and develop, aligned practices that can work for individuals, for households, and collectively. And this sense of all age, intergenerationality, and most importantly, embedding it in all that we do. Wow, thank you, Roberta. Lots to think about. You say you now need to go back and reread my chapter. That means you've got the book. Lucky you. I'm still waiting for mine to appear, but I'm told that it's on the way. Thank you too for the thank you there from Messy Church BRF. Oh, it's Lucy. Thank you for the encouragement. Hopefully Mark 2 has been a slight improvement on Mark 1 from about 11 hours ago. So thank you so much for being part of this Facebook Live. Go well, and I look forward, maybe over time, meeting you, seeing you, and hearing more about your good stories of how all age discipleship has begun, has continued to flourish in your Messy Church space. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night.